And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Insight on Business. I, again, your humble host, Michael Libby. We get to talk about advertising, marketing, consumer trends, and best business practices each and every Monday. We're going to be really divergent here and talk about some interesting things when it happens to be about consumers. And we have an interesting backstory for you. And I'm going to read some of this because I haven't memorized it all, as I probably should have. About 100 years ago, over a third of Americans were involved in some type of agricultural activity. And so their connection with the land was pretty secure. 2 generations ago, that number started to dwindle. And today, only 2% of Americans are engaged in production agriculture. That divide between the family farm, if you will, and the urban folks who eat the food has grown larger. And along with growing larger in numbers, as far as people not working on the farm or having a farm identification, so too is the information separate between the two parties. People who are involved in production agriculture tend to talk to other people who are involved in production agriculture. And because of the large amount of information that's out there, there's a lot of misinformation. And so we come to this confused consumer who's going, okay, there's organic, there's sustainable, there's traditional, there is nutrient-dense food. What's all this about? And recently we had a big brouhaha in the consumer group when Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, former Iowa governor, said that rural America is becoming less relevant. How do we pick up those pieces? How do we make this work? And how do we have people who are off the farm understand what's coming from the farm? That's the reason we have our guest in studio, Michele Payne. I knew it. I knew I was going to do it. Everybody does
No
that.
worries.
Michele Payne
Canoper.
Mm-hmm. I knew I was going to say Canoper, and it's just stuck in the head. Welcome to Insight on Business. Glad to have you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate being here.
You have a wealth of background here. You're the founder of Ag Chat and also Food Chat, I believe it is. 2 things that if you're into Twitter, kids, and we hope that you are, it's at InsightADV, at InsightADV for today. In the virtual world, these are discussions that go on about agriculture and about food worldwide. And now you've written this really interesting book, No More Food Fights. Mm-hmm. We want to have a better discussion around the dinner table about what goes on the dinner table. So let's talk about some things that you're releasing this on Valentine's Day, and you're in Des Moines.
I am.
Why are we so honored?
Well, I believe we need to share some food love, and regardless of whether it's Valentine's Day or whether it's any other day of the year, food is really simple. We all eat, and it deserves to be celebrated. And frankly, I think that all of us around the food plate can do a lot better job of having a more civil discussion and really being able to reach across the plate and shake hands, if you will, and share that food love. So the book was released on Valentine's Day in order to do that more effectively. It's one of my favorite holidays, so when it looked like the timing was going to work out, we picked it. And I'm in Des Moines because I'm actually here with the Iowa Farm Bureau, a great organization that I've worked with for over a decade with their leadership program. And Des Moines is a wonderful city. I spent a lot of time in Iowa, so pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation.
And home base is in Indiana.
It is, West Central Indiana.
You are an avowed farm girl.
I am.
And been baking bread and hanging with animals since you were 8 or 9 years old.
I have.
And
registered Holstein breeder.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, then you understand real hard work.
I do, indeed.
My friends who are row crop farmers, I always kid them about the 4x4 farmers, 4 weeks in the spring and 4 weeks in the fall. And meanwhile, those who have livestock understand that it's a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
Do you still have cattle?
We actually do have cattle that date back to a heifer that I bought for $7,000.
No
Talk about entrepreneurship when I was 12 years old. And we keep the heifers. Our friends milk the cows. So I try to be a little careful to not say that I'm a productive farmer because I spend a lot of time, obviously, off the farm. But we do own farmland that we cash run out, and we still have dairy cattle running around our front yard. And I consider that to be a great privilege and honor because it's a wonderful business to be in. And it's a business that contributes substantially to our economy as well as to our communities.
There's I mentioned the words family farm a little bit ago, and that conjures up all kinds of thoughts about this bucolic lifestyle, and we have chickens and hogs and milk cows and beef cattle and some row crops and some other things. But that's not really the family farm of today as much as it was perhaps 30, 40, 50 years ago. How has it changed?
Well, it's changed dramatically, largely because of technology, but it's also changed because of need to meet market demand, to be able to meet the world supply. And I think if you look in No More Food Fights, there's actually a couple of chapters in here and stories from farmers like Larry that we have with us that talks about Charlotte's Web, agribusiness or farmer, is in chapter 3 of the food side of the book. The reality is that farms today look very different, just as hospitals look different, high schools look different, and that it's okay that farms look different. The challenge that we have on the agriculture side, on the farm and ranch side of the plate, is that only 1.5% of the population do what we do. And frankly, we've failed in communicating adequately about today's modern farming practices. It's still the same types of people that are on the farm. It's still family farms that are taking care of their businesses, and they still are committed to doing the very best thing they can do for their land and their animals.
In the opening, we talked about how disconnected the world is.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 2% of the people provide food in America for the other 98% of the people. And there's this large cultural divide between rural and urban. How does this book, and how do you hope to make a better connection?
Well, to me, food is about choice and farming is about choice, and one should not supersede the other. One should not override the other. What my hope is that No More Food Fights, it will help move the conversation to a different level. The subtitle is Growing a Productive Farm and Food Conversation. My hope for the book is that human beings from around the plate, whether you're a food scientist, a dietitian, a farmer, a rancher, a mom, or a concerned food buyer, my hope is that people will understand that it's human beings on the other side, that we share like values and that we share like concerns, and that our passion, our common passion is food. And that sometimes we need to step back and just connect on those values and take a look at the expertise that others bring to the plate.
With all the information that's out there already, the internet world is a fabulous world. There's a lot of great information out there, and there's a lot of lousy information out there.
There is.
And so you have to be able to sift through the information, find fact from fiction. One of the things that this whole disconnect, I think, from production agriculture to the table in most American households is that they're confused. We talked about organic farming and traditional farming and sustainable farming, and most people don't understand the difference of those things. Meanwhile, we have traditional farmers saying, well, organic farming, that's something else. And organic farmers are saying, well, traditional farming is a bad thing. We have issues here in Iowa where we're talking about farm runoff. And as you know, Farm Bureau here is spearheading a voluntary program to assist farmers in taking care of those issues. Governor Terry Branstad and, of course, Secretary Northey deeply involved in those things. But along and up and down the Mississippi, we in agriculture per se, gets a public black eye about all kinds of things that are going on. That's a big fight. And there are the people who say, well, it's gone so far from a vegetarian lifestyle to even promoting a vegan lifestyle. So we got a lot of stuff up in the air, a lot of different publics. How does No More Food Fights start to bring those divergent views together?
Well, what we did with the book is I actually invited 35 contributors, including Larry Saylor from here in Iowa, and I invited them to contribute their perspective. I have a chef, I have an Olympic athlete, I have several farmers and ranchers, and I have some food experts, RDs, registered dietitians. And my point is to allow each of them to bring their story to the table so that, again, other people can relate to that and understand that expertise that's available. As you aptly pointed out, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation out there. The reality is that farmers and ranchers are in the distinct minority, with 98.5% of the population, many of which likely have not been on a modern-day farm. Again, I think agriculture needs to take responsibility for that, but likewise, people who buy food need to take responsibility for the information that they have. And one of my favorite chapters is actually chapter 4 on the food side. Does it pass the sniff test of science, sensationalism, or celebrity? And my point is, as a person with an animal science degree, as well as an agriculture communications degree, that science is still okay. And that there's a grocery sense checklist at the end of that chapter that talks about the 4 elements of what people really need to check to see if it's verifiable science. And I don't think that science supersedes what is happening as far as the other choices that you can make in the grocery store, but rather than simply believing the misinformation that you can find out there, take a look at science and give it the sniff test. That's all that I ask. And that's in the smell sense. And by the way, there's 6 senses on the food side, if you wonder why I keep talking about senses.
Of course. You know, when we talk about the agricultural community as a whole, and I mentioned something about Secretary Vilsack talking about rural America becoming irrelevant or has become irrelevant. And I think part of that may be political frustration. It used to be that a farm bill was an automatic, that we would be able to pass the farm bill, move on, and get it done. Well, today we find ourselves up against a large number of people who say, no, not so fast. We're not going to be doing this anymore. And again, it used to be the Midwest that controlled that, and then the southern cotton farmers were involved. And so we have all these divergent people within agriculture as well trying to slice up that pie. And again, we come back to the consumer who's going, what's the problem? How come we can't get something done legislatively? What do you say?
I think that politics today are very tough. And honestly, that was one of the inspirations to writing the book, not because it's politically oriented whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It is not. But seeing people's inability to have the conversation. What I say is that food and farming seems to have become the new politics and religion. You don't dare talk about it with people because you don't want to get your friends upset with you. And I think that's really unfortunate. We eat 3 times a day. In my family, we believe that sitting down to a meal is about being together as a family. It's about celebrating the food that is there and about enjoying that time together. Food does not have to be complicated. In my opinion, there's far too many movements within the food business that capitalize on misinformation and don't necessarily take a look at firsthand experience. So as far as Secretary Vilsack's comments about rural America becoming less and less relevant, my answer to folks is, unless we choose to become more relevant, that's probably an accurate statement.
And I think it was a great wake-up call.
Well, and we have to become more relevant because the reality is that agriculture feeds our country. It drives our economy. Nearly 20% of jobs in this country are related to the food, farming, and agriculture business. It's an incredibly important business economy here in Iowa, and people are doing the right things. And so the whole thought around farmers are terrible people, that they're supposedly poisoning the environment, they're causing food to grow tumors and so forth and so on. I actually go through my food introduction and I talk about walking through the grocery store. And as a mother, how frustrating that is to me to walk through the grocery store because there's guilt behind every food. You know, I look at organics and I question whether I should be doing that for my family, and then I look at the dollar investment, and then I think about people who can't afford that. And there's nothing wrong with conventionally grown food, but likewise, I also have friends who farm organically. So again, it goes back to choice. And then as you go through the grocery store and you look in the meat case and you think about all of the false claims that are happening about chickens being on antibiotics and hogs being shoved in pens and dairy cattle having terrible things done to them and beef being chock full of hormones. And then I think about claims about hormones, and I consider the fact that broccoli and cabbage have far more hormones in them than any meat. And so to get a little bit off the soapbox there, sorry, the point is the grocery store is so frustrating as a mom, and it's difficult for people to make the right food choices for their family. And I think that it comes down to your ethics, it comes down to your environmental standards, it comes down to your health standards, and it comes down to your sustainability. If you can answer those 4 things as a food buyer and you can feel good about that, then please don't have other people dissuade you based upon their campaign around veganism, animal rights, biotechnology. Make those choices intelligently for your own family.
An informed choice is always the best choice.
Exactly.
Speaking of choices, there has never been as many choices for the consumer as what there is today.
Yeah.
Here in the Midwest, we have a giant food chain called Hy-Vee, and they're opening up 90,000 square foot stores. We have then Whole Foods and the names escape me right now, but
Sure.
these very cool specialty stores that are going, farmers markets popping up all over the place, and individuals who are making a living on 10, 15, 20 acres of land. And so the opportunity to engage in agriculture has never been larger, but the understanding about what it is that we do is still pretty well muddied.
Yeah, and that is the gap that's represented in the peace sign. If you look at the book cover, there's a very significant gap there. And I was just looking up because I actually did the research. There are 40,000 products now found in grocery store on average, and that's in the start of the food side with the 6 senses of a meaningful food conversation. And I know when I go out as a food buyer, it's overwhelming to me.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I appreciate having strawberries and blueberries in January. And then I go to the bread aisle, and yes, we eat healthy and we eat whole grains and so forth. But I look and there's 75 choices of bread, and it just makes me want to bang my head against the grocery store shelf sometime, you know?
I do know. My mother, God willing, who's going to be 93.
Oh, wow.
Hey, it's a good thing. We go to the grocery store together. It takes her 30 minutes just to get through the produce.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, think about what's changed in her lifetime.
It's
and
remarkable.
I think that's one of the most honorable things about being in agriculture is it's such a revolving business, and it's such an opportunity for people to step back and appreciate true innovation. And I realize maybe not everyone is on the same page about technology and food production, but the reality is it allows us to eat better, it allows us to eat more healthy, and it allows us greater diversity, like we've already talked about, because of what farmers are doing and because of what agribusinesses are doing. And that's an okay thing.
Our guest is Michele. We're going to be talking about this book. It's called No More Food Fights. Interesting, we were talking about the peace symbol on the front, and it's got an interesting way of being put together, too. We're going to talk about that, as well as Ag Chat and Food Chat, and how you can get connected in this discussion should you be a Twitter user. This is Insight on Business. My name is Michael Libby. This is powered by Webcast One Live, and we'll be back right after this.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
You want your tax return done quickly and accurately so that you can get the maximum tax refund. And our friends at Fwirsa in Clive understand this, and they're here for you right now. Between now and April 15th, the staff at Fwirsa are welcoming walk-ins until 9 p.m. each Tuesday evening. Walk in or call for an appointment. Don't wait until the last minute. We've used the professional staff at Fwirsa for the past several years, and we've always been impressed. That's Fwirsa, working hard for you until the cows come home.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Insight on Business, and we're talking about this brand new book, No More Food Fights, with our guest, Michele. When we're talking about ag chat and food chat. Let's break that down for people so that they understand what the heck it is that we're talking about, and how this social media thing has opened up a raft of information for people in sharing projects and information.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ag Chat and Food Chat was actually founded on Twitter. It happens every Tuesday night, Ag Chat does, with the exception of the third Tuesday of the month, which is Food Chat. Founded back in April of 2009. It's hard to believe it's been that long, quite frankly. And both Ag Chat and Food Chat are now actually managed and coordinated by the Ag Chat Foundation, which was an outgrowth of the movement that the community really created. And I want to be crystal clear on this. Ag Chat and Food Chat are a success because of the community. Not because of me or not any individual. It's because of the community and because of the collective need to be able to talk about what's happening in food, fuel, feed, and farming today, and be able to have conversations. And Ag Chat, it was amazing early on to see the amount of people interested in that. And in hindsight, that sounds ridiculous, but it was just an idea that I had, that I threw out there to the world and had no idea what it would turn into, quite frankly. We've had thousands and thousands of people participate, I believe from 8 different countries, 4 continents. It might be over a dozen countries now. Anyhow, from all over the world, largely American, largely North American. We do have several Canadians, and we have some Australians. There is a Australian chat now, an EU chat just started. There was some work done in Africa, and there's been some work done in the UK. So it's fascinating. But to me, one of the greatest success stories is Food Chat, and seeing how that community really came together, because we have registered dietitians, and we have chefs, and we have foodies, and we have farmers, and we have ranchers talking about a collective interest, and that's food, and bringing our own individual perspectives to the table. So it's certainly an intriguing discussion.
Well, it is an intriguing discussion, and one of the really neat things about it is that, and it's monitored, which is really cool, kids, because you just don't go on there and start blowing off about stuff.
It's moderated, yes.
Yes, it is moderated. And individuals, there are certain questions that are asked, and then you have certain time for responses. And it's somewhat controlled, but that's a good thing because it doesn't go off on a freewheeling.
Well, it's a business discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
And for your viewers and your listeners that are business people, I think you can appreciate a facilitated meeting. And the chats have been very much structured from a professional facilitation standpoint. You can call me a little uptight, you can call me a control freak, or you can tell me a trained professional facilitator. And so when I started the chats, it was very important to me that it wasn't just a party.
Right.
It's fun to go to a party, but if I'm going to go to a party, I'd like to go to one in person.
Well, let's at least get something done.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the community submits questions, and it's moderated by different volunteers every week now for the Ag Chat Foundation. And if you want to hear about Ag Chat Foundation, you can go to agchat.org, and I would invite any of you that have any interest in food or farming to do that, because it's a wonderful organization that empowers farmers to be able to reach out and share their voice through social media.
It is a powerful tool. Okay, the book itself is constructed differently.
It is. It's a flip book.
It is a flip book. Here, this is one cover, and this is the other cover, kids.
It
so,
sure is.
Why? What's going on here? Oh, and there's even more to that. There's the middle section,
yes,
which puts it all together. Talk about this.
The middle section is actually the shared chapter, and it's about connecting at the center of the plate. To me, that's really the outcome that I'm hoping for. And it talks a lot about thought leadership, not only from a business perspective, but also from a human perspective. So the flip book was because food is on one side, farms are on the other side, and the whole point is that we need to bridge the chasm and be able to reach across the plate more effectively to grow the food conversation. So I have been working in farm and food advocacy for nearly a dozen years now, which is hard to believe.
That's hard to believe. Yeah.
It is. And spent a lot of time working as a speaker, and I could never quite give myself permission to write a book that was just strictly for the agriculture side, because to me, that was self-serving. What I really wanted to do was to be able to help people construct a more effective conversation and to be able to engage around the plate in a productive manner, so that hopefully at the end of the day, people know where their food comes from, they know where they can go to learn more about where their food comes from, and farmers and ranchers can also learn about people that are buying their food and what their interests are as well.
Who should read this book?
Anyone who eats.
And why?
Because if you care about your food, my hope would be that you know enough to be able to make the right choices for your family. That's what it's about.
Because you are a farm family person,
Yes.
how do you hope to become credible with non-farm people? How does that transition?
Well, that's a great question, and I actually have been working for the last year or more with some different dietetic groups. And what I've tried to do is to position it as being able to stand in the gap, to translate farm to food. If you look at the food side of the book, the last part of it is a glossary. It's my non-technical glossary. It's about 4 pages of different terms that I use throughout the book, that the contributors use throughout the book, that aren't commonly known terms. For example, haymow. I thought everyone knew what a haymow was, but some of my book reviewers informed me they didn't know what a haymow was. It talks about defining biotechnology and organics, and talks about heifers and steers and things like GPS and precision agriculture. So the glossary really is there to try to be able to translate those terms to other people.
And that's so important when you're trying to get the message across. You
It
gotta speak
is.
the language.
And I've had fairly good reception from many of the food crowds that I've talked to. There certainly are people out there who like to try to point fingers,
Of course.
and say some pretty negative things. And you know what? That's okay, because that tells me I'm doing my job.
If you shy away from those kinds of things, you don't get anything done.
Exactly.
Might as well drive right into the fire.
And this is about having a productive conversation. It's about bringing
It is
peace
about
to the
that.
plate.
It is about that.
And
And,
I-
in this toxic environment, and you mentioned it
Yes.
earlier, when we have politics, that's such a toxic environment in today's world, where nobody gets along, or it seems that way, and you don't just have a different opinion, you are my enemy. And that kind of stuff just doesn't produce any results that are
Exactly.
valuable.
It gets back to civil discourse, and as I've stated a couple of times, we all eat usually around 3 times a day. If you're like me, probably a lot more. I've been around food as long as I've been around farming. And it was interesting because during my college education, I actually took a fair number of food science courses and packaging courses, and Michigan State was very good about trying to have us go out with a well-rounded perspective. And yes, I will brag on our basketball team. I see you smiling over there.
Well,
Go green.
Go blue.
Oh, are you talking about U of M? Because we just stomped you.
I know you did.
In a major way.
I know.
So,
I know.
go
I
green.
know. We used to call you guys Moo You. Well, they still probably do. don't
I
they?
wear that as a badge. Of
I know
honor.
you would.
Thank you.
So you're in Des Moines over Valentine's Day,
I am.
and you're busy.
I am.
Where are you headed next? And it's thanks again for coming to Des Moines first.
Well,
Very cool.
It's an honor to be here, and I deeply enjoy being with Iowans and working with Iowans. And I want you all to know, for those of you that are in Iowa, you have great people taking care of your land and animals. You really do. You have families that care as much as you do about food, and they eat the same food that they produce. So take a look inside the book, if you will. You can check it out at causematters.com, or it's on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or in other fine bookstores, and see what you think. It's a book that's not designed to give you all the answers. It has the 6 senses on the food side, 6.5 steps for the agriculture audience on the farm side. And my whole point is to stop and thank people, and let's bring some peace to the plate.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this. And I know this is a busy time for you. Got into town, and you're doing media interviews all day today and tomorrow. And where do you go from here, by the way?
I am tomorrow with a...
I know tomorrow, but
Yeah.
like next week or the week?
Oh, next week I'm in North Dakota, actually,
Very
at
nice.
a show. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
Wow. The life of a traveling...
Well, I'm very blessed to be able to do what I love to do and to serve the farm and food business. To me, that's a privilege.
We didn't even get Larry on
We did?
camera. Larry, is that all right? You can read all about Larry. It's in the book, kids. It is called No More Food Fights. Make sure that you pick this up. It made a great Valentine's Day gift, and it will make even a better discussion topic, whether you're on the production side or on the consumer side, the backstory of No More Food Fights. Thanks again, Michele, for coming in.
Thank you.
This has been Insight on Business. Thanks so very much for dropping by and being with us. We'll see you later. Take care.